say something, by the way, where you are, by the way. It's kind of nice. Just
Yeah,
give a little
I will.
background
I
story
will.
where you are and why you're there outside in the gray and why it's foggy. It's always interesting. Some
Mhm.
gullible life story. Okay,
The
it's all
nomadic
yours.
lifestyle, as you Roloff said. Hi everyone, happy Monday. Here I am in a bit of different setting than usual. I'm sitting next to my home. I just probably have 200 years. So there in that white and blue house is my home. And usually I sit and watch the same view that now, but from a different perspective. But now I was on the run from my vaccination that I got, and I got a bit late. So I decided to stop here and just take our conversation with Roloff and then continue home. And yeah, we discussed with Roloff that it's in the nomadic style. You see that I live in front of the water, and now I'm just looking at the harbor. And usually you see the mountain in the background, but not today. Not today, it's cloudy, it's hiding. So, Roloff, you've had a beautiful weekend, much sunnier than mine, it sounded like. But that's the beauty of the
That's
global
true. Yeah,
connections. We can connect with each
yeah,
other and compare those. Today we're going to talk
yeah.
about the
And
habits
you,
that, yeah, sorry.
okay, I'm okay.
My connection might be not the best one now. That's why we might be talking into each other because I have a bit of a delay. No, no not willing to interrupt you. So that's not coming from there. So today we wanted to discuss the habits that we should skip or stop having um, to reach the next level of our productivity, of our performance, and the sustainability of thereof. So there is a list, and I'll post it in the comments later of those 20 habits. Roloff, would you like to give a couple of examples of your favorite habits, quote unquote? So those that you see maybe most common, or those that are the biggest needle movers. If you change this one habit, you can actually create a huge difference in your life and in the culture around you. What would you say?
Yeah. There's one that's very operational, and I think that's when the habit is that you tend to start off with no, that's not going to work. Probably not a good idea. So that's definitely a habit that doesn't help. Um, Another obvious one, and actually I think less people do it, but of course it's negativity. It's
Mm.
it's we're down. So those are certainly two things, and there are more, but that's also certainly those things kind of are really excellent at blocking initiatives and moving forward. So there's a favorite bad habit, put that way.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, this kind of thing, like this is not how we work here, and we've worked here for 20 years, and we don't need this new stuff going on. It works as it is, or vice versa. We've tried this 5 years ago and didn't work, so why would we try
Yeah,
now?
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the one you usually get. I don't think people just say that they're smart and say that it won't work. It's generally, we already tried that. We did it,
Mm.
and we really tried. It's a good idea, but it just didn't work. That's the usual way to do that. So maybe it's good because we're saying, okay, you don't you shouldn't have these bad habits, and we can sort of run through that. We will do, but maybe it's just good to stand a little by why you shouldn't have the bad habits.
Mm.
It sounds obvious, but maybe it's not that obvious. Why
Maybe
shouldn't you
not,
have?
actually.
Yeah, you have good habits. Maybe bad habits have a purpose. Well,
Mm.
there is the reason for and particularly the list of bad habits here is because they're connected with what we call a glass ceiling, and people. So a lot of these habits will actually not. You will not see a lot of these habits, many of these habits, in people who have received some level of leadership success. They've actually got through this. So this is targeted a good bit, not completely, a good bit to people who are still trying to get into a leadership position. And they
Mm.
actually might be quite competent in the job they're doing. But it typically be a job that's an individual job. They're not coaching or guiding other people. They're typically doing something, and they might be very, very good at it. But they find for some reason that even though they're functionally very good, that they're not getting promoted. They don't seem to be on that career path, and it's not clear to them perhaps why that's the case. And a lot of this glass ceiling, so they get the feeling that that they have a glass ceiling. And what I'm connecting here, or suggesting, that it actually is coupled to a number of these habits. And if you're a leader and you're looking to promote someone, if you see someone who has quite a few of these habits, you won't do that. You won't connect them, and it's difficult. And some of them you're not going to tell people because it's so ingrained. Perhaps maybe you should, but that's the reason. So it's the talk that we mentioned there. It's entitled "What Got You Here Won't Get You There." So with these habits that you have, as I said, it can get you to being competent in a job which doesn't require leadership skills. But if you have these habits, you're not going to be able to move to a job, get promoted to a job which does require some leadership skills. So that's important. So if you're not
I would
interested
like
in
to
being a
oppose
leader,
here.
challenge. Yes, go ahead.
I would love to agree with you, Roloff. Really would love to. But the reality that I see is that actually quite a lot of people who are in the power positions in the management, or let's call them leadership, but they don't deserve to be called leaders in the leadership positions. They have quite a lot of those 20 habits. So they got to the top because the culture was supporting those behaviors. And that's what that's I think where our disagreement comes from, the healthy disagreement about the glass ceiling, like who is creating that and how and why. We both agree that usually it's us personally creating the ceilings for ourselves, but the reasons come from different places. And I just had a couple of conversations recently about the promotions that my friends are getting, and they're saying that the higher I go, the more toxicity I see, the less I can stand for the culture that I see there, that I'm like the room that is just in front of me. So yes, they slide that glass door in front of themselves, but it's to protect themselves from those 20 behaviors and habits that are in that room that they don't want to enter. So
Okay, points taken. I wouldn't say that companies support the behaviors, but they ignore the behaviors. That's my gut feeling there. It's they just so companies can ignore the behaviors, and you're right. So a company that has a toxic culture is very likely a company that in fact is ignoring these behaviors. So they are putting people into leadership positions who are not showing leadership behavior. So certainly that's possible. That is certain, and that's only possible. That happens all the time, and as a result, you get companies with toxic culture. So that's an interesting question. Then is what do you do with toxic culture? Now, I do not believe that taking on the bad habits or keeping the bad habits yourself protects you from toxic culture. All it does
no.
is makes you part of the toxic culture. That's all it does.
And also eats you within, let me put it in, because that's what I see as well happening when people are not aligned with that and that's not their nature. So they just try to fit in. That really eats people within.
And I also doubt, it's a good question. I also doubt that if people, that even in a toxic culture, that people get promoted, I think, despite these things, not because of these things. I don't think that there is anything that you can see in any of these things, even in a toxic culture, where people get promoted because of these things. They will be very strong, probably, perhaps on other things. To mention one, maybe they have an unbelievable work ethic. They're putting in 18 hours days and they're driving other people to do the same thing. Now, that could be a reason, that a company promotes them. But if you look at that list of habits, you will not see, work ethic or extreme work has been mentioned in those, because it's not a blocking, it's not a glass ceiling. You will not, generally speaking, it's not the case that you won't be promoted because you're working 18-hour days. It's not healthy. You shouldn't do it, but it generally wouldn't be a reason. I mean, I think people might say, okay, I'm going to promote you, but at the end of the day, I don't want you to work those kind of hours, because in a leadership position, if you do that, you're going to be encouraging people also to have that behavior. It's not good behavior, but I don't think it's toxic behavior. So I think I'd want to split. There are behaviors that aren't good, but that doesn't necessarily make those the behaviors toxic. Now, this list of habits, I think, really do represent, do fall under the toxic behavior category. So it's a good question what you're saying. So certainly, you say you have friends who see this behavior. They would want to disassociate it from. They would want to demonstrate not do that behavior. I've never ever seen. I know people sometimes say that you have to demonstrate sometimes, kind of behavior to get ahead. You have to be that. Personally, I've seen a lot of people who never did that, who don't do that, who and in fact, genuine leaders, will never do that. They will have their own course. They will have their own North Star. They will follow that, and that's what makes it at a certain point a leader, because they do that, and they don't do other things because other people do that.
It sounds really nice in the theory. Of what I see in practice is that person entering the room and being the only one out of 10, 15 people, it's an uphill battle. You always need to prove yourself that your way can also work, your way can also deliver, your way can also be a healthy part of a culture or create a healthy culture. And I think that is what my friends are reflecting much. They are people who are used to reflecting. They are people who care, and they just feel like it's not worth it if you're alone. Because
so this is
you'll kill
interesting,
yourself.
because this is what leadership is about. It's the fact that when that it always is worth it. So let's be clear. Leadership is never. Nobody ever promised leadership to be easy.
No.
Nobody ever promised leadership to be easy, and in fact, it can be very, very tough. It can be very, very tough, and it's exactly those situations. How do you recognize genuine? I mean, the stories of inspiring leaders are almost always that it was someone who was going against the grain, was alone, was tough. Think, of the classic forebill, Mahatma Gandhi, when he started his movement in India for independence and was preaching nonviolence. I mean, he started alone, pretty much on his own, and for years, I suppose, he was on his own, and he probably would be ridiculed by his fellow, his peers. That's how leadership goes. So you have a period. When you're bringing change, you have a period when when the whole world's against you. And you're alone there, and you can fail. It can be that you can't get the boat moving. Because we know the success stories of leadership, but there are many, many failure stories of leadership. People who do the right things, but it doesn't help. Or they don't get the boat moving in the right direction. If that happens and you can't, then really it boils down to moving away. If the environment is so toxic that it drains you too much, that you can't bring up the energy, the best thing you can do is just to leave that environment. You think, well, okay, why do it? Why would I try to build a career in an environment that I find so toxic? What's the sense of doing that? So I think people would perhaps should walk away from, if that's a situation that they're seeing. And they can also address it. If they get to the point they can say, look, it's either I'm going to try and change this, or I'm going to walk away. That they try to hold people accountable for that. And maybe it's not, maybe in a toxic environment, you can't hold people accountable. It's ignored. You might address it and people ignore it. Yeah. Then what do? Then stop, go somewhere else and try something else.
And that's on the table. That's on the discussion there. But at the same time, when you love the company and what the company stands for or has stood for originally, let's say like that, before this leadership has come into play, and you really like the industry and what the challenges are ahead, that's the thing. It's hard to just say, oh yeah, I care about myself more than they just like taking this battle.
Okay, so there's a difference here about caring yourself more, which of course is an internal decision, and being able to effectuate change. So, I mean, to me, that's it. This is a toxic environment, and can I change whatever it is I want to change? So that's outward related, and that's actually a different story about what kind of cost am I willing to accept?
Yeah, and that's this kind of thing that creates the glass ceiling. In these cases that I had just conversations about last week, those are self-imposed, but those are to protect.
Yeah,
But they also stop
and
the career growth and limits your possibilities to affect the culture around you.
yeah, I understand what you're saying there, and you're quite right. That's a good question. Do you call that a glass ceiling? No, actually, you don't. You would call it, because it's not glass. You would just probably call it a barn door or a door. Exactly what it's a barricade. You just barricade yourself. Look, you say, look, I'm not going to concern myself about that. I'm just going to put my head down, just do my job, 9 to 5. Get in at 9. I'll do my job. And 5
It's
o'clock, I'm out of
not
here.
9 to 5 anymore. It's 9 to 9.
Or
It's already that level.
9 to 9. Yeah. Whatever it is you do, and you just think, well, okay, I'm going to just ignore. So that's what you're doing. You're ignoring the toxicity of the company, and you don't feel and actually you disassociate yourself in that sense from a part. I mean, part of the company. It might be, for example, you have a really great relationship with clients. You say, and that's what gives me energy because I'm working with the clients, but I'm just going to ignore part of the company. It's a choice, and it's a
very tough choice sometimes. Yeah, exactly. It's really about
it is. Yeah.
Being honest with yourself and authentic to what you want to take on your shoulders and what you can handle and what can you live with and what you can ignore and close the eyes to.
Yeah.
So it's really about
my own line on that. Really, it's always been not really that. Do I enjoy the job I'm doing, and does it give me energy? And if answer to either or both is no, then to me that means it's a signal that I should leave. That's how I've always treated it for myself. But that's of course a personal choice that each person should have. And certainly in Europe, at least I'd say, a lot of it, people really do have choices. I mean, they can. A lot of people really could go and do something. And there I do see glass ceilings. That people feel stuck. That they, okay, I'm in this jam. I can't move. Got a mortgage. It's a career path. So I'm on a golden chain. I'm earning this much, and I go somewhere else, I'm not going to earn that. And some of those things may be really limiting, but a lot generally, in my view, are. People, can decide, okay, look, so, what's the worst that could happen to me? You say, well, okay, maybe that means, we have to go back from 2 cars to 1, or we have to go back from a car to a bike and take the bus. I don't know what have you. And sometimes that's okay. Sure, a lot of people don't have cars and they go around with the bus or bikes.
It's all personal choice, and it's important to have this time and space for yourself to reflect on those things. I think that's what it boils down to, and the courage to be honest with yourself, first of all.
Yeah.
Really.
So what we in this discussion, we're actually seeing two things. So there's two things.
Yeah.
One is, how do you avoid demonstrating what is toxic behavior, and the reason to avoid that because of these habits. We talked about negativity, but there are other things that are there. For example, continually going back into the past, and how we did it then. That was it, and the good times, and this. I mean, that's another one
There
of
was
these
lack
things.
of listening, so always pushing
It's
your ideas. There was lack of appreciation. There was taking all the credit on yourself. So there were a couple more examples of the behaviors that we're talking about.
Yeah, and all of these behaviors, if you do them, you're not building a support group around you. You're not binding or bonding with people, put it that way. When you do these things, you're not creating connections, because that's part of your leadership. When getting promotion, you'll often have this invisible support, including your leader, your manager who's promoting you. You've built up this kind of invisible network of connections because you're doing this. You're inspiring people, you're helping people, you're ensuring that it's a so you build a sort of area of non-toxicity around you, which does work, because if you have that, people find it difficult to demonstrate toxic, or they don't react to that. I mean, I know personally, I'm not interested in gossip. It doesn't make me better. It really doesn't interest me. So whenever a conversation starts on that, it just dies down. So what do you think of Pete? He did that last week. I mean, how? I say, well, that's different people do different things, and then move on to the next topic, and so it dies away. So you can actually, and people also respond to that. So they know they try it twice, 3 times, and you're not working with them. You're not, there's no symbiotic toxic relationship. It dies away. So there's nothing to. So they'll stop doing that. So that's part of it also. The second part is the fact that there is toxic behavior around you. What
Just
do
a
you
moment.
do?
I'll pause you here, Roloff. I'll just give this a tiny exercise that when people want to practice this, like not getting dragged into the gossip, you can softly redirect the conversation, but you can also be very open about that and ask the 3 questions to the person who is willing to gossip with you. Do I have to hear this? Do I hear this now? And do I need to hear it from you? So is it really something that you and I should be discussing right now? Or should there be some other person in the room and I should hear it from that person? And I've tried a couple of times, and that was really appreciated. Of course, you need to have a relationship, and you have to have this kind of trust with the person and respect for the person, to put it that way. Otherwise, it can be taken very personally. But that is the door opening to really start shifting the culture around you. So yeah, now you can go to the second part. I just wanted to give this one because it's very powerful.
Yeah. Did I have a second part? I'm not sure. This was,
we discussed how to avoid getting into those habits and following those behaviors ourselves. And then the second part was kind of when we see the toxicity around ourselves. What do we do then?
Yeah. I said, do you ignore it, or do you exactly? So the example you gave was actually a way of tackling the toxicity. So when you saw the toxic behavior, this is example is that you address that, you address it specifically, and you if you have the trust and the influence and the power to do that, that's great. But I think a lot of people just don't have that, or just feel they don't have that. And exactly what you say, they could be taken. You do that, and people might be insulted because you're actually pointing out a toxic behavior. People do not want to be called out for toxic behavior, put it that way. They like to think, well, I'm great, so people tell you you're not that great, you're doing something destructive. That's not a message many people want to hear. Probably nobody wants to hear that, put it that way. So you probably have to be very careful about the message and when you can do it. But that probably is what you're saying is the best way to do that, is to try to tackle it one case at a time, one person at a time, one incident at a time, and say, look, I don't think you'd even use the word toxic, because that word's got a very negative connotation.
Yeah, very loaded.
Yeah. But
I
for
think it's
example,
important.
listening, for example, if you're the chairperson, I mean, this is one example. If you're the chairperson in a meeting, that you deliberately make sure that everybody gets listened to. And because I've been to meetings where it's the person who talks the most, and if they interrupt and they get to talk, and the chairperson will allow that to do, and that's a form of toxic behavior that's been. And even though a chairperson has the right to do that, there's no one, if they say, look, okay, thanks, but let's hear from Jane. I don't think she said anything yet. So you make sure, and has everybody had a chance? So if somebody says something that, and then somebody else will jump in and on that, so somebody might want to say something, doesn't, because there's just 2 or 3 people who are dominating the conversation. So you can very deliberately, remove that piece of toxic behavior if you're the chairperson, for example. So you can there'll be roles that you have where you can actually, from your role, you can actually tackle some kinds of toxic behavior.
And look for the allies. It's always scary to be this only person, but the truth is, my experience shows that you're never the only one questioning the things that are happening when it comes to the toxic environment. But it's just scary to speak up, and there must be at least 30% in the room sitting and thinking, what the hell is going on at the moment? Why am I part of this?
Yeah.
So look for those people.
Yeah.
Look for them in the meeting, outside of the meeting. Create connections with them. Create allyship, so that you know that you're not the only one and it really gives you the courage to speak up. Even if you know that they will not really start speaking up with you in the meeting, you have their support. You have their presence there, and together we are stronger.
Yeah. And some people will speak up, and in fact, you can even have the conversation. You say, "Look, I'm gonna bring this up. Are you willing? You're willing to back me up on this? You don't have to, but if you also, I know you feel the same way. Is it okay? Are you willing to, back me up on this?" And so because if we both find it, and actually that does happen a lot. You will find that people in a meeting, somebody brings up somebody, and somebody else with a completely different, will say, "Look, I feel the same way about this too." So you're quite right that pretty much any opinion that you have, there are probably other people who share it there. And even if they won't do it in the meeting because it's so toxic, they don't feel they can, they will appreciate that you do it. But that, again, that's leadership. It means that you run risks, because it could mean that you could maybe not lose your job. That's probably not going to happen, but it could certainly mean that that if there was a promotion coming along or an opportunity coming along, that you might be, there might be a price to pay for it. There might be a price to pay for it, and are you willing to pay the price?
But there's always price. If you stay silent, you're paying the price of being out of alignment with yourself, and that runs you on the wrong track as well. So that's what we discussed with the friends. What is the worst thing that can happen? They can, in the worst case, they need to get rid of me from the company because I don't fit in the toxic environment there. And then I said, then it's good that you get kicked out of the company that is completely misaligned with what you stand for and what you believe in.
Yeah.
And it's
once
scary.
Once you've accepted that, and in fact, so you don't feel. I mean, that's one of the most freeing things that you can have, is that you're not concerned about your career. That you think, well, okay, and that's actually one of the reasons you sometimes hire consultants, because they don't have a career there, so they don't feel. In other words, they're willing to speak up, or you can really speak and think, oh, what's the worst you can do? Fine, okay, well, go ahead. once you have that mindset, and I know I very deliberately, very early on, deliberately had that mindset. I thought, I said, look, it never happened. In fact, mostly it was appreciated. You said what you thought. You tried to be honest. It was your opinion. You didn't show the toxic behaviors we were talking about there, because some people think that actually being honest, all the time. I mean, it's not always the case. I mean, you don't have to tell if you think somebody's idea isn't good. You don't have to start saying, "Look, I think your idea is crap." And think, "Well, then I'm great because look how honest I'm being. I'm telling it like it is. I'm not being it. I mean, that actually is toxic behavior. You have to be clear what is toxic behavior, what is. But if you certainly say, "Look, I'm not a slave of my career. So what's the worst thing that can happen? I mean, is I get fired, or they do that. And so I mean, so what? Then you've got nothing to lose, to be honest."
You got quite philosophical and deep today, Rolf. Did
It's
you
because
expect
of
that?
that. It's because it's grey there. He didn't say why it was grey, because of the volcano smoke there. So you're in this grey environment that's getting you very much into this philosophical deep space. It's
Well,
contextual.
we're getting into the autumn here, so volcano or not, it will be gray most of the time or dark. So then, dear Helix of Success followers, be ready for more of philosophical deep conversations.
Yeah. Well, it
Rolf,
sounds
thank you
like
so
we've
much.
got to the end of this off-road trip, of this wherever we got to.
I want to keep more nuggets for the night for later.
Okay.
Mm.
So it was I guess we've got to the end of our session for today.
Yeah.
Toxic behavior, how to avoid it, and how to protect yourself from it, and how to try to change toxic behavior around you. So
Yep.
toxicity was the subject. So we'll take it from there.
Thank
So
you
I
so
wish
much,
you a
Rolf.
good trip across the bay. If you're really feeling adventurous, take the shortcut and swim across.
It's a bit difficult here, but yeah, thanks. I will get there. Got it. Lots of
Okay,
friend here coming
take
by.
care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye bye.